Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zooming right in on, well, one of physics' most elegant thought experiments. It's a device so simple, looks like it belongs in an old clock, maybe,
Yeah, something like that.
yet it holds the key to some really deep laws of the universe. We're talking about the Ratchet and Pawl, straight from chapter 46 of the Feynman Lectures on
A
Physics.
fantastic chapter. It really is. And our mission today is, well, it sounds straightforward. Can this simple mechanical gadget actually break the laws of physics?
hmm
Specifically, can we design this tiny wheel thing to get useful work out of just one heat source, like a perpetual motion machine?
Right, and this is Feynman's genius, really. He uses this seemingly simple setup to show why the second law of thermodynamics is just so inescapable, right down at the molecular level.
Okay, so the second law. Remind us of the core idea there.
Yeah, basically the second law says you just can't run a heat engine efficiently using only one temperature. You absolutely need a temperature difference to turn heat into useful work, period. So if this Ratchet and Pawl actually worked as intended, allowing motion only one way,
Then, well, the whole foundation of classical thermodynamics would kind of crumble. It challenges that core principle. Okay, let's really picture this device then. Section 1. The ideal versus the real ratchet.
right?
Mhm.
So imagine a tiny wheel, the ratchet, right? It's got these sharp saw-like teeth around its edge,
Yep, angled teeth.
and next to it there's a little lever, that's the pawl. It pivots, and it's held down by a spring, so it clicks into the teeth.
So it lets the wheel turn forward click by click.
But it physically blocks it from turning backward.
Yeah.
That's the idea anyway.
That's the ideal mechanism.
And then, attached to the axle of this wheel, there's like a little paddle, or a vane, and it's sitting in a gas.
Submerged in gas, yeah. And crucially, that gas is our single heat reservoir. Everything's supposed to be at the same temperature,
Okay, so the thinking goes. Gas molecules randomly hit the vane,
giving it tiny little nudges, random kicks.
and because the pawl blocks the backward kicks, only the forward ones should add up over time.
Exactly. So the ratchet slowly turns, maybe lifts a tiny weight, and boom, perpetual motion from random heat. Sounds brilliant, right?
It does sound clever.
Yeah.
But Feynman immediately throws a wrench in the works by thinking about it at the molecular level.
Right, because everything down there is jiggling. The gas isn't calm. It's a chaos of molecules constantly banging around. That's Brownian motion.
Okay, so the molecules hit the vane, we expected that.
But they also hit the pawl itself. See, when you zoom out, the pawl looks solid, like a perfect lock. But zoom in, and it's getting bombarded too.
Wait, but if the hits are random, why don't the forward hits on the vane still win out eventually?
Because the thermal energy, the jiggling, it doesn't care what it hits. It hits everything. And sometimes, just by random chance, a bunch of molecules will smack the pawl with enough energy.
To lift it up out of the tooth.
Exactly. Just for a split second, it lifts up over the tooth edge. And in that moment, if another random kick hits the vane backwards...
The ratchet can slip back a step.
Precisely. So over time, all those little forward steps you thought you were gaining, they get canceled out by these random backward slips caused by the pawl itself jiggling. The network, done. Zero.
Wow. So the very thing designed to make it go one way, the pawl is also its Achilles heel because of heat. Couldn't have said it better. And there's more. When that pawl snaps back down into the tooth because of the spring, there's friction, or damping. That generates a tiny bit of heat in the pawl itself, making it irreversible in a way.
Exactly. It shows you can't even run this thing perfectly back and forth without some energy cost due to heat. Thermal noise always wins if everything's at the same temperature. Okay, so single temperature is a no-go. Let's move to section 2. Making it an actual engine, we need a temperature difference.
Right.
The standard heat engine requirement.
So Feynman modifies the setup. The vane, the paddle getting kicked, stays in a cold gas. Let's call its temperature T$1.
Okay, T-1 is the cold side.
But the ratchet wheel and the pawl mechanism, they're now connected to a hotter gas. Temperature, T-T-total and T2 now is definitely greater than $2.
So now we have a hot source, T2-2 for the mechanism, and a cold sink, T-1, where the vane is getting its kicks, like a real engine.
And now we're explicitly trying to make this thing do work, like lifting a tiny weight. Each forward click of the ratchet lifts the weight a little bit.
Okay, so for the ratchet to actually click forward and lift that weight, it needs energy. 2 bits of energy, actually.
Oh, 2 bits?
Yeah, first, it still needs that little bit of energy to lift the pawl out of the tooth. Let's call that epsilon, the lift energy.
Okay, epsilon.
Second, it needs the energy to actually do the work of lifting the weight. Force times distance. Let's call that Whisper.
Right. So to go forward, it needs epsilon plus work it.
Correct. And crucially, where does it get that energy from? The Paul mechanism is sitting in the hot gas 2 $2.
Ah, so the probability of getting that total energy packet, epsilon plus work, depends on the higher temperature, 2 Hotter means more energetic kicks are available.
Exactly. More likely to get that big random boost needed for the forward step. Now think about going backward.
Okay, the ratchet slips back a step, the weight comes down.
Right. So the weight moving down actually helps the backward motion. It provides the energy work for you in a sense.
So to go backward, the system only needs enough energy to just lift the pawl, just epsilon.
Just epsilon. And where does the energy for that primarily come from? Well, the backward kicks are happening on the vane, which is in the cold gas, $T.
I see. So we have two competing rates, a forward rate, driven by the hot TT-2, needing energy epsilon plus W work on, and a backward rate driven by the cold T-, needing only energy epsilon.
Precisely. The forward rate is boosted by high T$2 but needs more energy. The backward rate is suppressed by low T$1 but needs less energy. For the ratchet to actually do network to turn reliably forward, the forward rate has to be greater than the backward rate.
And that only happens if T-2 is sufficiently hotter than T$1 to overcome the energy difference.
Exactly. The math works out beautifully. Feynman shows the rate forward is proportional to E epsilon plus W work 2, and the rate backward is proportional to E epsilon T2. For the forward rate to win, you need that temperature difference.
So what happens if we cheat and set T$ equals TD2 again?
Well, if $2.1 equals TD, the equations show the forward rate only equals the backward rate if wall work is 0.
Meaning, if the temperatures are the same, you get zero network out. It just jiggles back and forth.
Mathematically confirmed. It perfectly upholds the second law. Even at this tiny scale, you need that T$1 to get work. And the amazing thing, you pointed this out earlier, is that the ratio of heat taken from the hot side, T$2, to heat dumped to the cold side, follows the exact Carnot relationship. Q1 now higher and CS T1 T22. Yeah, this simple mechanical model, when you analyze the probabilities correctly, gives you the absolute fundamental limit of heat engine efficiency. It's quite profound. Okay, that links mechanics to thermodynamics, but let's broaden out slightly. Section 3, reversibility and irreversibility. This ratchet thing highlights a puzzle, doesn't it? It really does.
The basic laws of physics, like Newton's laws, they're reversible in time, right?
Yeah.
If you film billiard balls colliding and run the film backward, it still looks perfectly fine according to the laws.
Absolutely. The underlying mechanics are time symmetric.
Yeah.
So
why is the real world so obviously irreversible? Why does the ratchet only work one way reliably when 2-2-1 ondane? Why does milk mix into coffee but never ever unmix itself? Where does this arrow of time come from if the basic laws don't have one?
yeah, this is one of the deepest questions. The answer isn't in the laws for individual particles, it's in the statistics of huge numbers of particles.
Statistics.
Think about it. Is it impossible for all the air molecules in this room to suddenly rush into one corner? According to Newton's laws, no, it's not strictly impossible. There's some theoretical trajectory for every molecule that would make that happen.
And it's just insanely unlikely.
Insanely, astronomically unlikely. So unlikely we'd say it's effectively impossible. Irreversibility emerges from probability. There are just vastly more ways for things to be mixed up and disordered than for them to be perfectly ordered.
Okay, so that statistical idea leads us to Maxwell's famous thought experiment, the demon.
Right, Maxwell's demon, a clever attempt to defeat the second law using just information and mechanics.
Remind us how the demon was supposed to work.
Okay, imagine a tiny, intelligent being, the demon controlling a tiny, frictionless door between two boxes of gas, initially at the same temperature.
A microscopic gatekeeper.
Yeah. The demon watches the molecules zipping around. When a fast-moving, hot molecule approaches the door from the left, it opens the door to let it through to the right. When a slow molecule approaches from the right, it lets it through to the left.
So it sorts them. Fast ones to the right, slow ones to the left.
Exactly. Over time, without doing any work in the traditional sense, the demon creates a temperature difference. The right box gets hot, the left box gets cold. This would decrease the overall disorder, the entropy, seemingly violating the second law.
But Feynman's analysis of the ratchet gives us a clue why even this clever demon fails, doesn't it? At least from a mechanical perspective.
Yes. Even if the demon uses a mechanism like a tiny frictionless pawl or gate, that mechanism itself is immersed in the thermal environment.
Ah, so the door itself is getting jiggled by Brownian motion.
Right. The random molecular collisions would buffet the door, making it flap open or close randomly, messing up the demon's perfect sorting, or they'd jiggle the demon's fingers operating the door. Any physical mechanism the demon uses is subject to the very thermal noise it's trying to defeat.
So the same reason the ratchet fails at a single temperature. Thermal jiggling also undermines the mechanical demon.
That's the connection Feynman highlights here. You can't use the microscopic randomness to beat the macroscopic laws derived from that randomness, though the full story of the demon also involves information theory, but Feynman focuses on the mechanical failure here. Okay, this brings us neatly to section 4. Order and entropy. We've been talking about order and disorder. Physics gives this a name, entropy, often denoted delta emery. How do we properly define this disorder? Well, fundamentally, entropy is related to the number of ways you can arrange the microscopic parts of a system, like molecules, so that from the outside it still looks the same macroscopically.
Number of ways. Okay, give us an example.
Think of, say, a box of gas molecules. If all the molecules are squished into one tiny corner, that's a very specific arrangement. Very few ways to achieve that. That's low entropy, high order.
Okay, now let the gas expand to fill the whole box.
Now the molecules can be anywhere in the box. There are vastly, vastly more possible positions and velocity combinations for the molecules that still just look like gas filling the box. That's high entropy, high disorder. More available states, more ways to arrange things while looking the same overall.
So entropy increases when the number of possible microscopic arrangements increases, like shuffling a deck of cards.
That's a great analogy. A perfectly sorted deck, ace to king, suits together only one way to arrange that. Very low entropy. Shuffle it.
Billions and billions of ways it can be arranged and still just look shuffled. High entropy.
Exactly. And the second law of thermodynamics essentially says that systems naturally evolve from states with fewer possible arrangements, low entropy ordered, to states with vastly more possible arrangements, high entropy disordered, simply because the disordered states are overwhelmingly more probable.
And our Ratchet and Pawl is a perfect example of this.
It is. When $T equals T22, the system settles into the most probable highest entropy state, which is random jiggling with no net motion, no work done. Trying to force it to turn one way and do work would mean forcing it into a less probable lower entropy state, which just doesn't happen spontaneously without that temperature difference.
So the failure of the ratchet is really a direct consequence of the universe's tendency towards increasing entropy.
That's the deep connection, yes. The second law isn't just about steam engines. It's about the statistical nature of reality and the directionality of time itself. Order naturally degrades into disorder.
Right. Let's wrap this up then. An outro. What a fantastic deep dive using just a simple wheel and pawl.
It's amazing how much physics is packed into it. So, quick recap for everyone listening. We saw that Feynman's Ratchet and Pawl can't work as a perpetual motion machine at a single temperature. Why? Because the random thermal jiggles Brownian motion affect the pawl itself, allowing backward slips that cancel out forward motion. It only functions as a proper engine, doing net work, if you introduce a temperature difference, TT all in one. And even then, its maximum efficiency is limited by the Carnot cycle, just like any heat engine.
And we saw how this mechanical failure isn't just a quirk. It's tied directly to the fundamental concept of entropy, the universe's tendency to move from order to disorder, because there's just so many more ways to be disordered.
Exactly. The irreversibility we see everywhere, coffee cooling, smoke dispersing, things breaking, isn't really about the fundamental laws of motion being flawed. It's statistical. It reflects the universe moving along the most probable path towards states of higher entropy, greater disorder.
So the final thought for you listening, what does this really mean?
Well, it means that the fact things only run downhill thermodynamically, the reason we have an era of time where things mix but don't unmix, isn't just some local mechanical rule, it's tied to the history of the entire cosmos. The universe started in a state of incredibly low entropy, high order, and the reason our little ratchet doesn't spin forever by itself is, in a way, because of the Big Bang.
Wow. From a tiny gear to cosmology. That's quite the connection.
It shows how fundamental these principles are.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into molecular mechanics, thermodynamics, and really the nature of universal order.